Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little interview and, of course, one of the fights that ended up happening yesterday. I believe overall with that of Bruce Carrington. And of course, this was a fight card that actually I was supposed to watch, but unfortunately, I ended up missing it because I had some things to do as of yesterday. And unfortunately, I also had forgot that this fight card was on. But this was going to be a very interesting top ranked card because not only did you have Mr. Bruce Carrington, but of course you also had that of Xander Zayas, I believe is his name, who is a new Puerto Rican kid on the block. And both Bruce Carrington and Xander Zayas, in my view, they're going to be something to watch because I think that both overall of them are relatively talented. I think that Xander Zayas, that he had a relatively good performance over that of Patrick Teixeira yesterday. I thought that he could have been even a little bit better. Maybe certain people would say that, well, that's being a little bit, hard on that of Xander Zayas at the moment for defeating a former champion within that weight class. But in my view, Xander Zayas, had he had a better lead hand within that fight and, overall a better jab, I think that eventually he could have been able to stop that of Patrick Teixeira. But of course, he doesn't even have 20 fights on his resume as of yet. I'll give the kid a little bit of a break, but I do think that he is going to have to improve on certain things. But in my view, he is very talented. He's got good feet. He's got good head movement. He's got good defense. He's got decent power and decent speed. But I think that at times he needs to find a better way to get in on his opponent to get in better attacks. And that's going to be started off with that of the lead hand. But anyways, talking of course about the undercard as well. Mr. Bruce Carrington, and I'm not sure if now he has an official belt for that weight class or not. I believe that the man fights at 126 pounds. And the reason why, of course, this is a topic of discussion is because Mr. Naoya Inoue, who many right now would debate is right there with anybody in terms of the number one pound per pound fighter, right there with Crawford or Usyk or maybe even Canelo Alvarez if you were going to debate him as such. Those are the only four fighters right now that I would say have a great debate as the number one pound per pound fighter. Mr. Naoya Inoue, of course, was just recently able to unify that of the 122-pound weight class, the weight class right under it. And of course, the question is about Mr. Inoue because he's been so dominant and pretty much making all these fights look easy. Who is potentially going to be the next challenge for Inoue? Who is he potentially going to fight next that really could even challenge his throne? Well, out of any of the fighters, personally, that you just asked me, that may be a little bit overall of a threat. I think that Bruce Carrington probably would be that of the best opponent for Mr. Naoya Inoue. I think that he's a decent athlete. He appears to have decent power and decent speed. He appears to be a well-skilled and well-seasoned and well-schooled boxer. Now, of course, do I think that he had an A-plus level performance yesterday? No, not necessarily, but of course the kid only has 12 fights on his resume. I'm not really going to go too hard on him after that. I think that if he is going to, or at least for that, I think that if he is going to face Naoya Inoue, in my view, he might need a couple more fights, maybe against Stephen Fulton or maybe someone else at the 126-pound weight class who is of legitimate championship caliber material. But we'll see what ends up happening. I thought that his performance yesterday, if I was going to give him a grade, I'd probably give him an A minus. I think eventually he was able to get the stoppage somewhere within that of the latter rounds. I wasn't able to watch the full thing, unfortunately, so I actually wasn't able to see the stoppage. But Bruce Carrington, I thought that it was still a very decent performance. He shows a lot of potential. But anyways, once again, I thought that I would talk about this because Inoue, of course, has been on an amazing tear, and many people right now would call him potentially the best fighter on the planet, at least, of course, in terms of that of boxing, which you very much could debate. Inoue is extremely skilled, he's extremely fundamentally sound, and there's just not a lot of guys that are going to be able to challenge Mr. Naoya Inoue because Inoue isn't just a great boxer, but he's a guy that, like Roy Jones Jr. or like other boxers in the past or whoever they may be, Muhammad Ali, whoever you want to compare him to, he's pretty much a genetic freak. Naoya Inoue is a dude to where when you take a look at his physical abilities, he reminds me a lot of Roy Jones Jr. Extremely quick, extremely powerful, pretty much can knock you out with any punch, pretty much overall can get you with his level of speed to the point to where even if Inoue sometimes makes mistakes in the ring, he oftentimes is able to get away with it because his athleticism is just so monstrous. And I know that, certain people, once again, overall, when I compare him to Roy Jones, there's going to be a lot of people, that say, oh, let's slow down. People always are trying to compare non-black fighters to Roy Jones Jr. and to black fighters, blah, 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 in terms of athleticism. Listen, at the end of the day, Naoya Inoue, he was expected to at least have problems against Stephen Coolboy Fulton. and it wasn't a problem whatsoever. He was faster than Stephen Coolboy Fulton. He was way more powerful than Stephen Coolboy Fulton. Stephen Coolboy Fulton, really, to be quite honest with you, other than the round that Inoue looked like he was finally kind of taken off, there was really no round where Stephen Fulton hit Inoue flush. So it wasn't even just overall the speed and the power, it was his level of movement, and it was his level of distance control. So it's going to take also another great athlete, or at least a very intelligent boxer, to beat that of Naoya Inoue. And if there is a boxer right now that in my view could potentially do it, it would be this dude right here, Bruce Carrington. But we'll see. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's see what he has to say for the interview.
Shoo Carrington, last time it was Shoo York. This time you come away with an 8-round stoppage. What did you think of your performance tonight for the hometown fans?
I mean, there's some things I could have done more. There's some things I could have done better, like, on the defensive end. But, he was a tough opponent, man. I'm super happy that...
Well, if we're talking about the faults that I seen out of Bruce Carrington yesterday, and maybe this will just come along, in terms of his career. Of course, the kid is still, he's 27 years old. He's not super young. But of course, in terms of his professional career, he's not quite up there yet in terms of the level of experience. But what I will say is this. He has good feet from what I see. But at times overall, sometimes he needs to move in and outside of the range a little bit more. I thought that he kind of was a little bit too stagnant and stationary in terms of his feet. He moves his head very well. But I think that sometimes he let his opponent get a little bit too much inside the range. I think overall that, that could be changed a little bit. But once again, you never know where a boxer's career is going to go at this point in time. There are certain boxers that, once again, when I took a look at them when I first watched them, I said that no way they were eventually going to become the #1 pound-for-pound fighter or one of the top 10 pound-for-pound fighters, and eventually they did. When I took a look at Terrence Bud Crawford when I first watched him 10 years ago, I always rooted for him, of course, because he was from my hometown of Omaha, Nebraska, and he's a very entertaining fighter. But if you would have told me that the Crawford that I seen that had problems against Thomas Delorme and 5'5" Yuriorkis Gamboa in that fight, if you would have told me that later on that he would have dominated Errol Spence Jr. to the level of degrees that he did and became debatably the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, I probably would have not believed you. And I also thought the same thing with Canelo Alvarez. When I seen Canelo Alvarez struggle against the likes of Araceli Lara, when I seen Canelo Alvarez even have a little bit of problems against James Kirkland a little bit within that fight at certain times, and also, of course, get beaten by that of Floyd Mayweather Jr. pretty thoroughly, I would have never thought that at one point in time that I would have had Canelo Alvarez at my #1 pound-for-pound spot. So, once again, surprises, they happen quite a bit. Could Bruce Carrington eventually become a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter or be the one to defeat Naoya Inoue? At the moment right now, it appears that he's more than likely probably not ready. But of course, that's to be expected a little bit. So we'll see where he goes. But it's going to be very particularly interesting. And I'm going to be excited to see where he goes because he probably seems like the most talented fighter that could potentially challenge Inoue at the moment.
Brian, he had came in and, took the fight in last minute notice and everything like that. But he came to fight. He's really strong. His knockout ratio shows the power was there and everything. But, me, I just, I have a lot of experience to know how to get around that, break my opponent down and do what I do. And that's how we got the victory.
You told us your mentality is different. You here to punish, to dominate. Yeah. Do you feel you did that tonight? Yeah,
100%. He had a lot of will.
Well, I don't think Shoo dominated quite as much as what he probably wanted to. I'm not going to state that it was a complete dominating performance, but at the end of the day, once again, the kid only has 12 total fights on his record. So I'm not going to go too hard on him. It'd be different if maybe he was like an Edgar Berlanga or something like that, or Berlanga, however you pronounce his name, and he was getting close to 20 fights, or something like that. And on top of that, Edgar Berlanga, it's no offense against him, but he just has to face the right opponent, and eventually, in my view, he's going to go down. Because Berlanga, in my view, he just doesn't come across to me as having this superior boxing ability. But of course, you never know. Because I kind of thought the same thing with Ryan Garcia, and of course, he was recently able to beat Devin Haney. Of course, he was on some sort of PEDs. I also believe Devin Haney has been on PEDs pretty much throughout the majority of his career, but it is what it is. But anyways, when it comes down to it, like I said, we'll see where this kid goes from here because he's still very inexperienced. But the thing is that I'm not really quite sure if he's going to have much time if he wants to face out Naoya Inoue. It's going to be interesting because, once again, if he ends up winning a title within that weight class, Inoue is going to go after him.
certain times I would catch him with some shots, and he'd be like, "Woo, come on, let's go, shoot." And I like that. You know what I mean? I like the guy that would like to fight, but that gave me even more of a reason to want to break him down and get him up out of there.
You got a lot of belts around you right now. You know who else has a lot of belts?
Who?
Naoya Inoue, the man who is in the crowd.
For sure.
I know that that's a name that you've been mentioning. Why is it that his presence here is so important to you?
I mean, well, it's interesting that he's here. He came to watch, and he's leaving right now. So obviously he came to watch me.
And Bruce Carrington, of course, after he ended up getting the stoppage, he was yelling, or I believe shouting at Mr. Naoya Inoue, and Inoue waved right at him. So obviously Inoue, at least it appears for right now, has plans of fighting this dude. He realizes that this guy is a great talent, and that this guy is potentially the next challenge for him. Let me give Mr. Naoya Inoue a lot of credit. Because, for a lot of these channels that always love to state all this stuff about how, Crawford has to be #1 pound for pound because he's willing to take on all challenges, or even other channels like Canelo Alvarez and all this other stuff, usually you don't see a boxer that is just willing to take on any opportunity at any given time. Naoya Inoue actually is one of those fighters. I don't think I've ever seen another fighter throughout my boxing tenure, at least watching professional boxing, that is able to go up the weight classes and then on top of that fight the best guy there immediately or fight the superior level talents. Not only has he fought the likes of Nonito Donaire and Emmanuel Rodriguez when he ended up moving up weight classes, he fought Stephon Coolboy Fulton, he fought that of Louis Neri, he fought a couple of other guys, and now it looks like he's about to plan to possibly fight Bruce Carrington very soon, which is going to be very particularly interesting. Once again, we'll see. So I have to give Inoue a lot of credit out of any other fighter today. And yes, there's fighters out there that probably overall have bigger, resumes out there. But I don't know if I see another fighter on the planet that is as willing as and accepting of challenges as what a Naoya Inoue is. I have to give him a lot of credit. Because even other fighters that I've seen like Canelo, he was a little bit, kind of, taken aback, and he didn't really want to, entertain the Andrade fight unless he absolutely had to, or a fight like that against that of a David Benavidez, at least kind of, someone at this time, unless it was with a lot of money. Or even Alexander Usyk, it appeared that he was a little bit reluctant to kind of take that Deontay Wilder fight a little bit at first, which of course he should have been, because Wilder didn't have a belt, and on top of that, he's super tall and dangerous. So why the hell would you want that fight when you can potentially get the Tyson Fury fight? Get unification and be remembered as the best fighter of your generation. Of course, it makes sense. But Inoue is willing to get in with a lot of contenders, even if at that time it doesn't appear that it would always suit him. So I'll give Mr. Naoya Inoue a lot of credit. I'll give him a lot of credit. So once again, he's probably the only fighter on the planet right now that I've seen, and Crawford, of course, great fighter as well. But there was also certain times where he was a little bit reluctant to face certain fighters as well. He wasn't always hot on the idea of fighting Sean Porter or going over to the PBC. And of course, right now with Jerome Boutzenis, it's not like he's super welcoming of that fight either. And I don't completely blame him in some of those circumstances, at least with the Jerome Boutzenis thing. But Inoue does not get enough credit, in my view, for the amount of fights that he's willing to take. Or the type of fights that he's willing to take.
Ringing bells and I'm making noise, and that's what we plan to do, continue to do in our career, and I definitely want to make that fight happen sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Shushu. Tess, we send it back to you.
Wait. One more thing for the Puerto Rican fans.
What's that?
One more thing for the Puerto Rican fans, man. Viva Puerto Rico, puñeta!
But anyways, that was pretty much about it for this video. I just thought that was very particularly interesting. But anyways, of course, that pretty much is about it. In terms of the Puerto Rican thing, of course, for that is Xander Zayas. And I'm not quite sure if Bruce Carrington is part Puerto Rican or what. I'm not necessarily sure. But Xander Zayas, he does appear to be the next new good Puerto Rican kid on the line. I definitely find him more talented than that of Edgar Berlanga, or Berlanga, however you pronounce his name. But, he is going to have to improve a little bit. So we'll see. And he's also in a division to where he is going to have to work a little bit fast, because you have guys like Tim Tszyu there, Virgil Ortiz, Terrence Bud Crawford, Israel Madrimov, all those guys are somewhat relatively talented, at least for Xander Zayas at this current moment in time. Actually, a fight that would have been interesting would have been Madrimov versus Zayas. That would have been interesting, but I'm not quite sure if he has the level of experience to at least beat Israel Madrimov, at least completely dominantly. But I'm not really quite sure what level Xander Zayas is. I don't know if I would really claim him to be an A-grade fighter quite as of yet, but perhaps he is. At least on the A- level, he's definitely very talented, but we'll see what happens. But the last all-time great Puerto Rican fighter that were to come across in boxing, it was that of Miguel Cotto. And I think that there's been a couple of other Puerto Rican fighters that have kind of fit that of the flag, at least for a little bit of time. For a time, it kind of appeared like it was Danny Garcia, at least if you want to count the Puerto Rican American. Then it was a little bit of Felix Verdejo. Then, of course, his tragic end, of course, when it comes down to it, then it was, overall, I believe, Edgar Berlanga, or Berlanga, however you pronounce his name, and, now it appears to be that of Xander Zayas. So Puerto Rico has not really quite found their next, Puerto Rico has not quite found their next boxing stone or their boxing prodigy quite as of yet, at least not a confirmed one. Miguel Cotto was kind of, straight out of the gate, and it was very clear that he was going to be the next one. I'm not really quite sure who it's going to be for Puerto Rico this time. As for Mexico, after Canelo Alvarez, it appears, at least, that David Benavidez more than likely is going to be the next one for the generation, but we'll also see about that. Could be Jesse Bam Bam Rodriguez as well, because David Benavidez, I'm not really quite sure how well he's going to fare once he really faces some of those legitimate heavyweight fighters. But we'll see. or light heavyweight fighters, excuse me. Like Beterbiev or Bivol. But we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see where this goes. Mr. Inoue does appear interested in this fight, as he should be. This is going to be a great fight if Bruce Carrington, of course, is able to get the right experience in. So we'll see what happens.